fives going into week 9. Do you want to start it off? You want me to start off?
You can start.
Okay. So this team I've been leaving off of my top 5 list for the last several weeks now. But now that they are where they are, I feel like it's only fair for me to put the Vikings at number 5. Finally. They're 6-1.
Thank you.
They've won a number of different ways. When they need to make a big play, they do. We saw Patrick Peterson make a big play against the Cardinals. I think it's time I do that. Plus, with the addition of TJ Hawkinson, makes their offense just a little bit more explosive. Not like that mattered already because they already had Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. Oh, yeah, and Dalvin Cook. So I think it's finally time I give the Vikings their credit, and I put them in my top 5.
Yeah, at my number 5, I have the team from Dallas, the Cowboys. I was really impressed with what they did defensively. I thought this was a team that had limitations scoring. They proved that with their defense and Dak looking really sharp in his second game. I think you have to put the Cowboys with how good their defense is and how they can win in multiple different ways. They can win a low-scoring game. They can win in a shootout if they're going up a team with a bad defense. So I think overall, they've been really consistent, and I was really impressed how the coaching staff weathered the storm and handled Dak Prescott getting injured. And all of that comes to you struggling versus the Lions, and then you snap out of it, and then you go on a run and score 20 points in a blink of an eye. That's a really important skill for a pro football team to have, because when your defense can all of a sudden boom, boom, make plays, and then you can play complementary football, I think that's awesome. And then you almost blew a lead versus the Bears. Defense gets a turnover. Offense converts. That's really important. And then they looked really good without Zeke. And I think Zeke knows that. Zeke had a comment where it sounds like he knows his time in Dallas is coming to an end. I think you have to go with the guys who are going to be there in the future. They're the ones who you're going to build around and help you win. Zeke just can't help you win games.
No.
Shut him down and then trade him next year, because you don't want him getting hurt. If you want to trade Ezekiel Elliott, his value is low enough right now. So it's time to shut down Zeke. We all know we're trading him next year. So let's build with what we have right now, because he's not going to help you win games.
Give some snaps to Tony Pollard. We saw what happened last week. Tony Pollard went nuts last week.
Yeah, and even Turpin.
Yeah, he's been making plays as well. Plus, they got a number of fast receivers that can also fill in that running back role as well. So I like the Cowboys at number 5. My number 4 team, they've had a couple of tough losses this year. Maybe haven't had the same record that you might expect from a team that has really weapons on both sides of the ball. I'm, of course, talking about the Cincinnati. Nope, just kidding. I'm talking about the San Francisco 49ers. Just traded for Christian McCaffrey. Got a bunch of dudes. Deebo Samuel. Got their injuries a little bit banged up defensively. But with every other team in the NFC, I have my doubts. Even with the Vikings, they have Kirk Cousins. Even with the Cowboys, they're the Cowboys. But with the 49ers, the only true threat that I see to the Eagles, who we'll mention later in the show, they're the only team I see as a serious threat. They got weapons everywhere. Christian McCaffrey with Kyle Shanahan, I'm horrified. Deebo Samuel, say what you got to say. And the only team that also has playoff experience as well. So if we're talking about top 5 teams, maybe their record doesn't show it yet, but 49ers, number 4.
Yeah, and playoff experience is going to help, especially when Sirianni and Kevin O'Connell are getting into situations they may have not been in, and they have to make a big decision. Well, Kyle Shanahan, whenever he's had Jimmy G healthy for a full season, they either make it to the conference championship or the Super Bowl, so that justifies the top 5. My only concern with them right now is health. Deebo Samuel getting injured is definitely concerning. You definitely have to treat that with a high level of concern, make sure he can fully recover so he's himself for the playoffs. And then just their defense, it's kind of hit or miss right now, but overall I like the pick at number 4.
Okay, you're number 4.
At number 4, I have the Vikings. Everything you said. They just got better, by the way. They're 6-1. The best team in the league besides the Eagles and the Bills record-wise. So they're right there with the Bills, 6-1. You bring in Hawkinson with an already dynamic duo in Thielen and Jefferson, and then you have Dalvin Cook in the backfield, and your defense is good enough where as long as you're putting up points, you're going to succeed. And then I love the addition of Zadarius Smith. You still have Patrick Peterson, and you have a lot of other good additions that Kevin O'Connell has been making and adjustments. And I just think when you have a coach that doesn't hate his quarterback, you're probably going to play a lot better than you did the years past. So I'm excited to see what they do going into the playoffs. So I have high hopes for them.
And then our top three is probably pretty similar. But number three, I have the Bills. The Bills, I love their team. I mean, top to bottom, maybe the best roster in the NFL, outside of maybe the other two that we'll mention in a second. Josh Allen playing great football. Stephon Diggs, say what you will about their offense. Their defense, they got the Von Millers of the world. They're able to make big plays. Their big question, which has been the running game, they just got Nyheim Hines, kind of swapped him out with Zach Moss, which I like. We'll see the addition. We'll see how much it changes their run game. I still feel like they're going to be too Josh Allen dependent. Wasn't super impressed with their Packers game, but overall, top to bottom, there's three teams in the NFL that are consensually the top three teams, and that's the Bills. And the other teams we'll mention in a second. So I have the Bills at number three.
Yeah, number two, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. I think we can both agree with that. The Kansas City Chiefs have had the best defense I think I've ever seen with Patrick Mahomes on the team.
Yeah.
I think with Carlos Dunlap resurrecting his career in Kansas City, I love the pick of George Karlaftis and the safety Reed from Houston.
Yeah.
And then Chris Jones. I mean, what can you say about Chris Jones? I mean, he has to be one of the most overlooked players because I feel like I don't hear a lot of people talk about him just in like circles of fans. The media talks about him a little bit, but he needs to be up there with Aaron Donald, and he needs to be talked about more because I do think he deserves to be in consideration for a Defensive Player of the Year this year because he's always right there. Impact-wise, he's there with Aaron Donald. He's there with Myles Garrett and TJ Watt, and he was – for a while, the only defensive freak that the Chiefs had. Now you have Karlaftis. Now you have Dunlap making plays. Now you have Nick Bolton, who I love, at linebacker. So overall, the Chiefs have to be number two just because of how dangerous Patrick Mahomes is going to be if he has a defense that can get a stop. And then they played the Bills. I get it. They lost to the Bills earlier in the year, but hey, they got blown out 38-20 by the Bills the year before. And I was like, oh my God, maybe the Bills will beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. And then I picked the Bills to beat the Chiefs. And the Chiefs are like, no. I'm Mahomes. I'm Andy Reid. We're going to get this done. So it's like, until I see it happen, I can't believe it. Especially because the Bills are cursed and they haven't accomplished anything.
Yeah. I think with the Chiefs, the reason why I picked them over the Bills, I think if you were to play 100 games of Bills and Chiefs, I think the Chiefs are going to probably win them 51% of the time.
Yeah.
Especially in the regular season. Those teams are so evenly matched. Two great quarterbacks, two great receivers, awesome, great defenses as well. So, I mean, would we have said the same thing if the Bills had lost to the Chiefs? I mean, ultimately, these two are easily the best teams in the AFC. You can pick one or the other. I just have the Chiefs because I have faith in the Chiefs more than the Bills just because of their dependence on Josh Allen.
We've seen it.
And we've seen it with Patrick Mahomes. He's got the weapons that he needs. He's got the best defense that he's had. So, yeah, the Chiefs are the best team in the AFC. And the number one team is?
Obviously the Eagles. Where do we start?
7-0.
7-0. Adding to their team. They bring in one of the best pass rushers that was available in Robert Quinn, who's playing really well. That trade made Roquan Smith cry, which I felt really bad watching that. Especially it's like we talk about players in the NFL, but when someone gets traded, you're losing your friend, and that messes with you. It's like it's part of a business. You're going through the season, then all of a sudden you look, and then your friend's just moving to another city out of nowhere. So that's the one thing that's like a really powerful moment, and I think that's a really important moment for people to reflect on in that press conference. And then Sirianni, Coach of the Year. We've talked about their defense with James Bradbury, Darius Slay, two of the best corners in the league. And then you have Devontae Graham, Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, and then you hit on your other draft picks as well and bring in A.J. Brown. It's like, what else is there to say?
The only other thing that you forgot to mention was how great of a job Howie Roseman has been as an exec. Getting A.J. Brown, and then also getting a first-round pick for this year, which if the Saints continue to struggle, could be it already is a top 10 pick, but could be a top 5 pick if the Saints continue to lose games. So you somehow got AJ Brown for a first round pick, but then also got a first round pick for this year. So you're retooling this team. You're making moves. You're not necessarily sacrificing your future. You're supplementing your future to get key assets while also keeping draft picks so that you can continue to sustain it. So that's why I think the Eagles are the best team. Everything with Jalen Hurts, everything about their defense, Nick Sirianni. Eagles are easily the best team in the NFL right now.
Yeah, and you have to say that just because the Chiefs have had a moment where you're like, I don't love that. The Bills have had a moment where you're like, I'm not in love with that either. The Eagles really haven't had a moment where I'm like, that's unfixable, or that's a continuation of a trend that's going to be bad. Like the Chiefs losing to the Dolphins, that's a head scratcher for sure. And then, I mean, the Chiefs losing to the Bills, it's like, okay, well, Pat Mahomes threw the pick at the end of the game. That's kind of concerning. But overall, it's like you have to pick the team that hasn't had a bad game yet.
No, and that's the Eagles.
Yeah, the closest game they had was week 1, and that was the Lions game where the Lions almost came back.